Hello and welcome to Two Crones and a Microphone. I am Linda.
I am Betty.
And I'm Sally.
As cultural midwives, our podcast offers guidance and teaching to those seeking wisdom from our experienced crones. That's us. We utilize effective methods to connect with ourselves and our surroundings, our environment, and we embrace spirituality as a source of resilience and empowerment. Welcome to Embracing Our Inner Queen with Love.
In 2024, as part of our Restore and Replenish series, we are implementing a number of updates to Two Crones and a Microphone. Beginning in March, our podcast will resume its twice monthly schedule. We are excited to share that Crone's spiritual sister, Sally Rothacker Payton, will now be joining us in future episodes.
Yay!
Additionally, we will be featuring interviews with friends of ours and others who have fascinating and diverse perspectives, many of whom are accomplished authors and artists. And I, for one, cannot wait to interview some of these women. I have some really interesting, or what I think is interesting questions for them. I can't wait to introduce our audience to these women. They are awesome.
I agree. I'm looking forward to hearing as well what people have to say about the things that they've done. I wanted to start by sharing a quote from Ocean. The wisdom that comes from being an older person is wonderful. You just can't get it or have it when you're 20. There's a certain wisdom that comes with you because you've had the experiences that are necessary to become archetypal, to go to the subjective level. When you're 20, you can't make the same kind of decisions around the same happening that you can when you're 50. So what are your queen and your crone about? I think that people have a lot of stereotypes about just even the meaning of those terms.
Hear, hear.
Remember, when we share practices that may seem focused on crones, or today as we talk about queens, just remember that we can access our queen and our crone at any age, and it's really not about what specific age you might be. So you can be a crone or a queen and be 30 or 35. But we're going to talk more about that and how that could be. So I'll turn it over to you, Betty.
Well, I think that usually the queen is identified as a woman who is 45 and up. But as you said, you can channel your queen at any time. So the queen is the bridge, right? When you get into your queendom, it can mean two things. One, you finally come to a point in your life where you have more time to spend time on yourself, on your projects, your different creations that are going on, because a lot of times that's when your family has grown up or you've reached a point in your career where you may have more time. You know, maybe you've accumulated more vacation time, or perhaps you're at a point where you can delegate a lot of the tasks you've been doing up into the middle of the night to other people. So you've reached your queendom at that point, right? However, you could also be a queen in your late 20s. There are some extraordinary women who've been able to do this. So queen has become a term for women who have really become accomplished, not necessarily a woman of a certain age. In my mind, though, I do think of it as someone who's probably 45 and up, because to me, your queendom is a bridge into your crone. Linda, you had read a definition of queen, so perhaps you can share that with all of us.
Yeah, I find this really meaningful. Queen is it's a newer archetypal term. It hasn't been around for that long, but around 2020, this began to emerge as a concept. And it's because we live longer now. In other times, we might not have made it into our 50s or 60s. But now that we have a little longer lifespan and hopefully good health and be able to accomplish things, the queen begins to come forth. So this is the definition. The queen can be seen as a later phase of the mother archetype. And, keep in mind creative ventures. If you're a mother biologically or by adoption, that doesn't matter. There's always the creative impulse that gets acted on. She's a woman owning her own power and authority within herself and in the world. If she had children, they're usually now older, allowing her greater focus on her other creations. Just what you were saying, Betty. This is a woman negotiating her responsibility and power. I like this part. And reveling in all she's mastered and accomplished. It's good to know that over the course of a lifetime, this is Linda speaking now, not the quote, that really we can accomplish things and that we begin to veer toward mastery after a certain amount of time of just trying things. I usually like to say that, after I've been doing something for about a decade, then I'm heading toward I really know it. And one example of that is in the herbalism that I studied, right? After about 10 years, I'm feeling really comfortable and pretty confident about what I might know. Now, back to the quote. She has much to teach and remains actively engaged in society, either directly or through her teachings. She's renegotiating the all-encompassing giving of motherhood, creating clearer boundaries, bing, 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 around herself, her time, and her expenditure of energies. She reaps the benefits personally of all she's done and directs more of her power and attention to her own needs and creations. This can be a powerful personal, spiritual, and political stage of her life. I think there's so much to unpack there. So let's dive in. Let's talk about motherhood for a second, because I know for me, I entered motherhood at a much later age. I was older. I had already had time to do creative ventures, get a certain grounding for myself in life and my business career. And I never really expected to be a mom, because growing up, I was already a mini mom. I was the oldest of 5 kids, and I was always handed the reins whenever my mom went out. And oy vey, that's all I can say. It is not the same being the oldest with your brothers and sisters, your siblings. That's a very different relationship, I can say now in retrospect. But for a very long time, I really didn't think I wanted to have biological children or be a mom in any way. And I had great creative impulses and did a lot of other things, but it was about the time I got married, I sort of felt a little, I'd say, knock on my spirit's door from another spirit. I went, oh, really? Really? Huh. Well, maybe. And about 3 years later, we had my daughter. I think I say my daughter, it's our daughter, and I was 42 when I gave birth. So I think one of the good things about that, besides having a healthy birth, that was fortunate, is that I was much more mature. I was much more grounded. And I brought so many different skills and perceptions to being a parent that I don't think would have been capable of in my 20s. And Sally, I know you had a similar experience.
It's true. So I also did not become a mother until my mid 40s. And I think, that's more common now than perhaps it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I think that role has broadened for people to welcome children into their homes as they're older.
Yes, I agree.
Than that was, when I was younger. But it was exciting and different. And I also think that it made me a different kind of mother than I would have been when I was in my 20s. I had an opportunity to go to school and complete graduate school before I got married. And, then ultimately we had children about 15 years later. And so I think that the time that I might have taken with my children and the decisions I made about the things that we did with them, they were really number one priority.
Yes.
Because I felt like I had, met a lot of the professional goals that I had wanted to meet. And so it was easier to be really fully present with them. And, we've talked about the fact that having some of the teachings that we've had with Oshana, that sort of changed the way I personally, along with Bob, approached raising children. And so I know I've told the story that you guys said I should tell. Sometimes those things get you into trouble. Like you find yourself doing things with your children that perhaps the schools or the teachers may not appreciate.
Mhm.
So we loved telling stories. So every night at the dinner table, we would go around the table and tell a story. And sometimes it was just a story from the day, or sometimes it was starting a sentence. And we would each go around the table and add to the story, and then so create a family story. But the result of that was that during one of those parent teacher conferences that you have with your kids and the teacher said, oh man, my youngest son, his name is Ryan, he may or may not appreciate that he's in the podcast, but anyways, he was the storyteller, and he's always telling stories and always elaborating on what she as the teacher had to say. And I felt a twinge of guilt there because I created that and it kind of got him in trouble in school. Not that I would have gone back and changed that, but I think that notion of spending time and helping kids to be, not that younger people don't do that,
Of course.
but we were in a position to, really dedicate that to our kids, that time to our kids.
I love that story. I really do. And I know for me, it was a process of being able to actually settle in and actively listen to what my daughter had to say.
You bet.
So important. And I had such fun too. That's the other thing. It kind of opened up my own childhood to get to look at it a little differently, and also understand that I was the one, in charge in certain ways, but that it's just so rich and delightful to, get to raise a spirit on the earth here. And that's a place where the Oceana teachings really helped too, because I did introduce to her the notion of all beings are our family. And, that's a little bit different than maybe a nuclear family idea.
Agree.
Well, I'm the crone who did not have any biological children. I married in my 40s. I could have had a child. Larry was very open to that.
Mm.
But when I thought about it, I realized I really did not want to have any birth children. I had 2 stepchildren through Larry's previous marriage. And I just knew there was too many things that I wanted to do for me.
Mhm.
I had grown up taking care of my mom, my sister, my brother, as you did also, Linda. And
Yeah, but
and I was a nurse, and I was in charge of like 60 nurses at one point. It was just seems like I was always in charge of something. I went
Mhm.
into the military. I was an officer. I was always in charge of all that stuff.
Mhm.
I just didn't have any bandwidth left to give to a child. And I knew that.
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to continue on with what I was doing, focus on my career. Of course, ultimately, and this is where, the universe starts really laughing. I wound up taking care of my mother for a good 10 years, took
Mm.
care of my husband when he became ill. Now
Mm.
as my sister says, she's now my project. So in my later years, I have all these people that I have taken care of.
Yeah.
But it's okay. You just kind of go with the flow, right? And I see that people who may not have biological children, many times what they do is, there's so much open to people now that we did not have years ago.
Yeah.
You have, grandparents actually raising grandchildren, and those grandchildren, like I have grandchildren. They're
Mhm.
from my stepkids, and
Mhm.
they're my grandchildren. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And I adore them. I've taken care of them. They've opened up my eyes to quite a few different things. Like my 23-year-old granddaughter is living with me part-time now, and we're watching Game of Thrones together.
Wow.
Which some of you may be going like, oh my God. Well, yeah, I did do that in the beginning. But, Carly explains a lot of things to me. I'm like, oh, okay. And she helps me navigate different things. Like I might get confused with the 20 million characters they have, but she'll point them out to me, so it's a really good relationship. I think we're very balanced in our relationship.
Mhm.
I see people with their pets, their pets are part of their family. They spend a lot
Sure.
of time with their pets.
Sure, sure.
Are they taking the place of children? Maybe in some cases they are, but we all have, I believe, that instinct to love, to
Yeah.
cherish another
Yes.
being.
Yes.
And so perhaps you're not a biological mother or never wanted to be a biological mother like me,
Mhm.
but it comes out, that caring comes out.
Yeah.
And honestly, by that time, I was a queen.
Yes.
I had run a critical care unit. I did all kinds of nursing, different things. I was in the military. I was an officer responsible for a lot. And I had accomplished quite a bit.
I want
And
to throw out here too, you accomplished stuff, by starting Minerva as well.
Yes, I did give birth to Minerva. I will say that. If you give birth to a company,
Yeah.
yes,
A creative
absolutely.
endeavor. Absolutely.
There's a lot of ways of giving birth.
Yeah, that's
Doesn't have to be
Yes.
biological.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I have a cradle board hanging in my office. And I've always thought about that cradle board as Minerva's cradle board.
Here we are. See? There we go.
So there are many ways, many, many ways to do this
Yeah.
and achieve queendom.
That's a great example, Betty.
Well, Betty, you had an interesting thought too about when women are younger, sometimes there's a little more competition, and we're veering now toward a little bit different way of looking at that as queens.
Well, sometimes younger women can be competitive. I think that that's true.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can think of a lot of ways that women are competitive when they're younger. And, we've talked about this. Do you have thoughts about that, Betty?
Yeah, I do. I think when you're younger, you're more focused on dating, finding a partner, your looks. And that's not to say that as you get older, your looks aren't important. I mean, just look at YouTube videos. There's 20 million women on there doing makeup and tutorials and all that other stuff. You want to be in fashion. So there are many competitions, I believe, that go on for many younger women. I think when you start to reach your queendom, that kind of calms down a little bit because in many ways you're settled already. All right. Maybe you have a life partner, or maybe you have a partner that you enjoy spending your time with. You have another focus. You figured out your makeup by then. It may change, but you start figuring it out. And I used to be able to do my makeup in like 5 minutes, right? Literally slap it on and out the door. You have all that. And so you can focus on the things that are important to you, your career. Perhaps you're writing a book. How many young women are out there now self-publishing? There's tons of them.
Yeah.
And they're very successful, and they found ways to do it without using publishing companies. So they've reached their queendom, and there's more to come. There's absolutely more to come. We do appreciate other women who in their queendom are sharing what they've done, but it helps us to achieve our goals. So I think it's more of a collaborative effort when you get older.
I do.
That is my
too.
opinion. I don't know what you guys think.
I agree with you. And often, especially in various women's circles, these days there's really the emphasis on trust in the circle, truth telling, and a willingness to risk with each other, feeling that support. And, we're breaking open those paradigms. And I think as older women too, we can help lead the way on saying, we're here to support you. We're here to listen. We may or may not brainstorm with you. We may or may not fix things, but we're here. We're available. And I think that really begins to bring out the best parts in ourselves. One of the things in a lot of circles I've led is we talk about when women support each other, it helps each of us fill our own cups and fill each other's cups to a point where we exit that that circle, will say, that teaching, that class, we'll exit it feeling so much more whole and better than when we came in. You're nodding your heads. Okay.
Yeah, and I think too, at least I noticed this as I got into my 50s. And I don't know what this would have been, maybe 20 years ago, but younger women are looking for us to role model for them,
Mm-hmm.
for us to support and mentor, which you mentioned, right? With
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
support and
Yeah.
mentor people
Yep.
professionally, to support and mentor around maybe child rearing or relationships or other things. And so that's I think another piece of what you were saying. And maybe when well, I'll just leave it at that.
I
Just
think
say it.
I think it's all really interesting. I think we are shifting some paradigms, and I appreciate it. I know in the circles that I've led that it's always been an intergenerational circle, and everyone benefits that way. When I did the Goddess Within Us program, when I taught for Minerva and the Feminine Wisdom program, there would often be younger women in their late 20s and their 30s, along with 40 somethings, 50 somethings, and 60 and 70 somethings, even a few in their 80s. And I always found it was a much richer, more in depth experience that way. So I like to think that we're heading in that direction more and more.
I agree. And I'm also, I think things are changing, thoughts are changing. It used to be when you started to turn 40, it was like, oh my God,
That's
I am
true.
going to be 40. This is really not good.
Mhm.
Oh, my heavens. And then it was 50.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm going to be 50. What happens when I'm 50? Am I looking at menopause? Oh my heavens, this is like really not so good. But I find that's changing slowly but surely. Not to say that people are jumping up, women are not jumping up and down going, woohoo, I'm going to be 60 years old. Although I have to be honest, for me, I was not unhappy when I hit these milestones. I think 40, to be honest, for me was like a shock. But after that, it was like, oh, the heck with this nonsense. Because what I found and what I think women are finding now is that they are more confident within themselves and they're seeing other women of our age with supreme confidence, which we have. We're extremely confident within ourselves, and that's achievable. That is achievable.
Yeah.
So embrace it. That's our message. Embrace being the queen. It's a great place to be.
I agree.
I do as well. Thank you for saying it so much more eloquently than I was stumbling out, which I think leads us to this quote that we wanted
I
to
do
share with you
too. Yes.
from Maya Angelou. And it came to me, this quote came on a card, one of those gift cards that somebody gives you. And I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful quote that fits really nicely with what Betty was saying. A woman in harmony with her spirit is like a river flowing. She goes where she will without pretense and arrives at her destination prepared to be herself and only herself. So
I
again,
love that. Sally, thank you. And that brings to mind a story. This happened for me just today because I was sitting at my desk and I do some work there and had just finished a sort of project that I needed to get taken care of. So I decided about 3 o'clock today, I was going to go and find a glimmer moment. You may remember Betty and I did a whole podcast on glimmering. It was number 27. And glimmering is about finding those moments that give you a breather and that begin to connect you with joy and resilience and awareness in the moment. So I stepped outside and luckily it was a lovely day out. It was about 50 degrees, just stunning after all the winter weather we've been having. Now, P.S., I still have some snow on the ground here, but as I looked out my door and I thought I caught a glimpse of literally something glimmering, glowing, kind of, flashing up next to my driveway. So, of course, being the curious person I am, I hiked up to the driveway and I didn't see anything. I was expecting to find a little piece of metal or something, didn't see anything. But then when I looked over by the driveway itself, there was this beautiful, small, fits in my palm, granite stone with dark gray and white and pink in it. And it seemed to want to just leap into my hand. So I said, thank you. And then all of a sudden I decided, wow, it's such a nice day out. I'm going to go sit by my favorite oak tree, which was about 5 steps away. And so I said hello to the oak and sort of sat there right at the sort of nestled at its roots. And the sun was shining and it was lovely. And I was looking at the stone and I just suddenly felt a big sense of relief, like, oh, I really feel in good place here. I feel alive in my body. I feel happy. I feel this sort of glimmering of joy and presence and just being okay with the world. And so I just want to share that because to me, that's an element of being in my queendom. Because telling myself, okay, it's time, you've done enough. Go find a little glimmer moment. And then to have all these things string together to conspire to give me a glimmer moment was lovely.
I think that's a beautiful story.
I think it's a great shot in the arm too for the day. I mean,
Yeah,
we're all so busy. I will say
I know.
that the three of us are super busy with all the different things we're involved in.
True.
And to give yourself permission to leave your desk, go outside, that is part of being the queen/crone, right? Because you gave yourself permission to do this. No regrets, walk outside and just enjoy yourself for a few minutes. And it really does uplift you.
It was such a renewing moment. Absolutely. Completely agree. Well, thank you for witnessing that story.
Thanks for sharing it, Linda.
Such a cute stone, too. I still have it by my side.
Maybe we'll post that on our Facebook page, a nice picture of it.
I think we should. It's really good.
I do
like
too.
It. I like it. Well, Sally, you had some ideas about reflecting and changing as a queen and how we might actually apply that.
So last podcast, we talked about the mirror meditation, and we want to just take that a step further. So podcast 29, we talked about looking in the mirror and telling yourself that you love yourself. So we want to extend this to ask you to think about some of the things when you're either looking in the mirror, or maybe you look in the mirror and you do that meditation and you tell yourself that you love yourself and that you are beautiful. And then you sit down and journal, or you sit and think as you're going about your next activity, some of the following, because this is a great way to access the queen. And again, you can do this at any age and use the mirror meditation to get to the queen and to love yourself. So one of the things you might do as you're looking at it, and again, you're thinking about it not as being narcissistic when you're loving yourself, but you're looking at it as a way to access aspects of yourself and what aspects of the queen you carry. So you might be doing this and you're 35 and you're thinking, oh, I'm not a queen. I got 15 good years on me still before I become a queen. But maybe you are, in charge of your own business and you've mastered a lot of those skills that come together when you enter that 50 something. So how do you show grace and assurance with who you are in the world? Think about that, because those are characteristics of the queen. How do you approach changes? You know who you are, where you've come from, and where you're going. And how do you want to look at that? Where are you actually at this stage of your life, at this time of your life? Because again, maybe you're 50, maybe you're 60, with work, with family, with those things in your life that bring you joy. And when you look around, what are you grateful for each day? As Linda mentioned, where are those glimmerings in your life? Are you doing things that you want to be doing? What could you be doing differently? What would you need to do if you wanted to make changes in the path of where you're at? So if you're looking in the mirror and you love what you see, but you're thinking, maybe things aren't exactly where I want them to be in my life, or, oh my gosh, I'm 49, which means I'm going to be a queen next year. And you may look at that and just kind of examine what that brings forward for you. Because remember, each day we have the opportunity to make those changes in our life that we would like to make if we want something to be different, or maybe we just want to appreciate exactly where we're at because we are where we want to be. And
Sure.
we're looking at our life and maybe we see the richness of it just exactly the way it is.
Mm.
And so this is an opportunity to just extend that looking in the mirror and think about some of those things, and then decide what we want to do with that information when we identify it. And again, I'm always big on journaling. However we do that, we might draw, we might write,
Mm-hmm.
we might paint. Maybe the way we journal is by talking into our phone and recording something and thinking about our thoughts where we are in a particular day. Or maybe we do that review by appreciating those relationships around us. Like maybe we have people that we kind of verbally journal with. And that means sitting down and chatting with your friends, just like we're talking with you now, just taking that appreciation of reflecting with a circle of people that you may have, or maybe it's one person.
Sure.
And so those are all different ways of, kind of blending that and bringing that in, and then
That's
thinking about
great.
what your next steps are.
Well said. Well said.
Really lovely. Yes. In fact, that's our wisdom practice for you this time, to use
if you-
your meditation and go into what is my queen? What are my queen aspects?
And again, remember, you can do this at any age.
Sally, I really appreciate you going through all the different ways, that you can kind of honor the impulse too, of finding that out and being able to anchor that through writing, through talking, through sharing, through internal methods. Really good. Thank you.
We're sitting out under an oak tree and reflecting and looking for
Yes.
your glimmer message.
Yes.
Or sitting and talking to your little spirit animal, like
bet.
Luna.
You bet.
Luna gets an earful, boy. If she could write a book,
that could be a bestseller.
It would be.
Thoughts from Luna.
Guarantee it.
Yeah.
Conversations with Luna.
There we go. We may have a good idea there. I like it. Well, amazingly enough, this has come to the end here, and we want to thank you for listening. We want to thank you for listening in to Embracing Our Inner Queen with Love. And we really appreciate you tuning into our podcast. And we'd appreciate it even more if you'd kindly spread the word, and feel free to reach out to us with any questions on any subject, and we'll be more than happy to answer them.
And as you share it with your friends and family, all right, tell them that this year podcast will be focusing on the theme of restore and replenish. Our podcast is dedicated to sharing techniques to aid you and help you navigate the muddy waters of our time, giving you ways to be kind to yourself and to others. So I also like to add that this podcast is sponsored by the Minerva Educational and Wellness Treatment Center, LLC. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go right to our website, minervaed.com, minervaed.com. We also have a website for 2 crones and a microphone where you can learn more about your 3 crones, the 3 crones who are here. So please leave us some feedback. Let us know what you think, and don't be afraid to tell us what you would like us to talk about, because let me tell you, we have plenty of things to say about various topics.
We sure do. So Sally, would you like to take the ending this time?
Sure. I think that we want to lead into the fact that we'll be doing some different things with our next podcast, but when we come back, we're going to be really focusing on crones. And so I think I'm going to end with this quote from Oshana. People on this planet need older people in their lives. It's essential for the people to listen to the old folks. There are things that we can only learn from old folks. There's just no other way.
Thanks all. Till next time, be well.
Bye bye.